Welcome to our Red Hat Government Symposium Executive Insight Series. I'm Wyatt Cash with Scoop News Group, and we're here today with Cindy Blake, Senior Security Evangelist at GitLab. Cindy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let me start by asking, where have you seen examples of how the federal government has looked to data to fuel digital transformation?
Well, every agency really is now a software and a data agency. For them to support their mission, they need to be able to quickly adapt their systems to respond to citizen service or threat landscape. And an example would be the shared data repository, data.gov. It's going to help expedite analysis and data insights. And that shared data, when it's used in a common and consistent way to validate and analyze the data, it enables transformation based on insights obtained across multiple agencies.
Well, and as part of the open source world, I'm curious to hear, how has open source technology played a key role as the federal government has faced critical challenges recently, like COVID-19 and its response?
Well, open source technologies can accelerate code delivery, whether it's in the public sector environment or commercial. The DoD approved open source use back in 2009, I think. And a lot's happened since then. But if we look at the last 4 years in particular, open source adoption has really grown dramatically, particularly for enterprise OSS. And sites like code.gov and data.gov that we mentioned have given way to an entire community of government collaboration. And there's also a federal source code policy which requires new custom developed source code that's developed specifically for the federal government be made available for sharing and reuse across the federal agencies. So it's almost like your own open source environment. And, in a way, COVID has given new insights to civilian systems and the effectiveness of digital transformation efforts to date. Really, for example, some states fared better than others when it came to the tax, or the drain, I should say, that was on their unemployment systems and websites, and that kind of rose the cream to the surface. The sharing of data across systems now helps drive the areas of focus for development in order to for government agencies to be proactive instead of reactive, and to be able to roll out scalable digital civilian services in the areas that are needed most.
Well, and kind of a related question, how does open source enable better cybersecurity for government agencies?
Well, it allows better sharing, but one, I think, example is our customers, for instance, can easily scan the source code of our application that they use for vulnerabilities and risk. And so it allows them to be more proactive rather than reactive in that regard.
And then, well, that makes sense, actually. I also wanted to ask, lastly, what trends or technologies should federal agencies be paying attention to now in the coming year relative to the open source community?
Well, forward-looking agencies are deploying a standardized DevSecOps software factory across their enterprise, sort of platform as a service, more or less. I've been told that Nick Shalane was recently quoted as saying agencies shouldn't allow each subcomponent to spin up their own software tool chain. And that really goes hand in hand with what we see in the commercial space, where they're following can't speak, my words get ahead of my mouth, following a similar trend of maturing beyond the bring your own tool to the DevOps space. Another trend, I see two other trends. One is zero trust. This technique has been around for a long time, but it was called out in the executive order on cybersecurity. So it's getting a lot of renewed attention. And the key here is really thinking beyond traditional network security and network access. You need to use the same principles, which are, expecting that the attackers will infiltrate and providing protection from the inside, but you need to apply that beyond the network to your applications and their surrounding cloud native infrastructure. And this kind of goes hand in hand with the third item, which is the software supply chain attacks that helped fuel creation of that executive order really point out the need for agencies to look beyond traditional application security testing. While AppSec testing is still foundational, it's no longer enough on its own. The CI/CD pipeline is sort of the assembly line of the software factory, and security teams really need to ensure that the pipelines are hardened so that no updates can be deployed to production without going through the agency's security and compliance tests and approval.
Cindy, Blake, thank you so much for taking a few minutes to share your insights on the evolution of open source in the federal government.
Thank you for having me.